Welcome to HassXAI DOC, Untrend, uncovering the stories the world forgot to tell.
On the morning of July 19, 2004, Lori Hacking, a 28-year-old woman with everything to live for, vanished. Lori had planned to wake up early, around 5 a.m., to go for her usual morning jog in the Memory Grove area of Salt Lake City, Utah. It was a routine she had kept for years. Lori was a well-liked stockbroker's assistant at Wells Fargo, married to Mark Hacking, her high school sweetheart. They had dreams, they had plans, and for the most part, they appeared to have a perfect life. But that morning, everything changed. Lori had been excited. She was 5 weeks pregnant with their first child and was gearing up for a big life change. She and Mark had plans to move to North Carolina, where Mark had been accepted to the University of North Carolina's medical school to pursue his dream of becoming a doctor. Their apartment was packed, and they had just celebrated a going-away party.
Lori had even put her career on hold to support Mark while he finished school. It seemed like everything was falling into place. But by 8 a.m. that morning, Mark awoke to an empty bed. Lori wasn't there, but her car was gone. It was unlike her to leave without waking him, as she usually depended on him to drive her to work. Mark assumed that she had gone on her run and driven herself to work after finishing. After all, Lori was independent, and it wasn't out of the ordinary for her to go about her day without disturbing him. But when he woke again at 10 a.m. and realized that Lori had never arrived at work, his concern grew. It wasn't like her to leave without notifying him. The search begins at that moment. Mark called her workplace, Wells Fargo. The response was chilling. Lori had not arrived. He then remembered that the clothes Lori had set out for the day were still at home. Lori's absence was no longer just an inconvenience, it was a mystery. The sense of dread crept in, and Mark's stomach churned as he tried to grasp the enormity of the situation. He immediately called 911. But, like most cases, the police weren't able to help immediately. The desk sergeant he spoke to informed him that the protocol was to wait 24 hours before officially reporting someone missing. Mark, feeling helpless, decided not to wait. He drove to Memory Grove, the park where Lori would usually go on her run. It was an area surrounded by trees, and she had always felt safe running there, but today, it felt eerily quiet. There, Mark found Lori's car still parked, exactly where she usually left it while jogging. The car was undisturbed, and there was no sign of Lori anywhere nearby. Mark was frantic, but still, there was no sign of foul play, no broken windows, no signs of a struggle, but Lori was missing. By 11 a.m., Mark had gathered some of Lori's friends and family to help search the area. Together, they combed the nearby trails, but still, there was no sign of her. A deep feeling of unease began to settle in the pit of Mark's stomach. What could have happened to her? Could she have been abducted? The more hours passed, the more the fear gripped him, and the uncertainty became overwhelming. The police soon arrived, and with the memory of Elizabeth's smart kidnapping still fresh in the minds of the community, they began to investigate thoroughly. Canine units and helicopters were deployed to comb the area. But after several hours of searching, there was still no trace of Lori. However, people began coming forward with strange and unsettling accounts. A few women, who regularly jogged in the area, recalled past interactions with suspicious men. Some had even felt uncomfortable, mentioning that they had seen strange vehicles or individuals lurking around. With the possibility of abduction in the forefront of their minds, investigators began to build a profile of what might have happened. It was clear that Lori had been vulnerable during her run. No one could deny that there was an element of fear and uncertainty. But there was something that made Lori's case particularly disturbing: the apparent perfection of her life. Lori and Mark had been high school sweethearts. They were both excited about their future. Mark had just graduated with a master's degree in psychology from the University of Utah, and they had dreams of starting a family and a life together in North Carolina. But Mark's story, though tragic, was beginning to unravel. By 1 p.m. that day, investigators were questioning Mark closely. He was upset, but his behavior was beginning to seem a bit peculiar. When asked about his wife's disappearance, Mark explained that when he woke up at 8 a.m. and noticed Laurie's car was gone, he didn't think much of it. He assumed she had gone for her morning run and driven herself to work. However, he became increasingly anxious when he realized that she hadn't arrived at work. Still, there were contradictions. Witnesses, including a neighbor, told police that Laurie's car had been parked outside their apartment at 7 a.m. When asked about his wife's disappearance, Mark explained that when he woke up at 8 a.m. and noticed Laurie's car was gone, he didn't think much of it. He assumed she had gone for her morning run and driven herself to work. However, he became increasingly anxious when he realized that she hadn't arrived at work. Still, there were contradictions. Witnesses, including a neighbor, told police that Laurie's car had been parked outside their apartment at 7 a.m. When asked about his wife's disappearance, Mark explained that when he woke up at 8 a.m. and noticed Laurie's car was gone, he didn't think much of it. He assumed she had gone for her morning run and driven herself to work. However, he became increasingly anxious when he realized that she hadn't arrived at work. Still, there were contradictions. Witnesses, including a neighbor, told police that Laurie's car had been parked outside their apartment at 7 a.m. When asked about his wife's disappearance, Mark explained that when he woke up at 8 a.m. and noticed Laurie's car was gone, he didn't think much of it. He assumed she had gone for her morning run and driven herself to work. However, he became increasingly anxious when he realized that she hadn't arrived at work. Still, there were contradictions. Witnesses, including a neighbor, told police that Laurie's car had been parked outside their apartment at 7 a.m. When the neighbor left the apartment again at 8:30 a.m., it was still there. This was strange. How could Mark have woken up at 8 and assumed Laurie was already at work when her car was still parked outside? At this point, Mark was becoming the center of the investigation. Why had he gone out and purchased a new mattress between 9 and 10 a.m. on the same morning that his wife went missing? It seemed odd, given the urgency of the situation. Mark was also acting strangely. He made an odd comment when asked about Laurie's disappearance, saying, "Laurie is going to be so pissed at me." When questioned further, he explained that he felt guilty because he hadn't gone running with her that morning. Investigators found this remark disturbing, considering the gravity of the situation. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that Mark had been living a double life. It was revealed that despite his claims of being accepted into medical school, Mark had never even applied to any medical schools, including the University of North Carolina. In fact, Mark had lied about everything: his education, his career, his life. He had told everyone that he had been working toward a career as a doctor, but in reality, Mark had dropped out of school years before. The books strewn around their apartment, the term papers he had written, the fake interviews he attended, all part of Mark's elaborate web of deception. His family, Laurie's family, and even close friends had all believed he was on the path to success, but the truth was far more sinister. Mark had lied to everyone, including his wife. Laurie had been suspicious of Mark's lies. She had confronted him about his fabricated story about medical school. Laurie had even called the University of North Carolina, where Mark claimed he had been accepted, only to find that there was no record of him. This was just the tip of the iceberg. Mark had been living a lie for years, and it had all been unraveling. Laurie had discovered the truth, and it seems that Mark was desperate to keep his secrets hidden. It was only after several days of investigation, with mounting evidence pointing to Mark, that the horrifying truth came to light. Mark eventually confessed to his family. In a moment of clarity, Mark admitted that he had murdered Laurie after she confronted him about his lies. The argument escalated, and in a fit of rage, Mark shot Laurie in the head while she slept. He then spent the next few hours attempting to cover up his crime, disposing of Laurie's body, the bloody mattress, and the murder weapon. Mark's lies had caught up with him, and in a fit of desperation, he killed Laurie to keep his deception from being exposed. He had feared that she would leave him, that she would expose him for the fraud he was, and in that moment of fear and anger, he took her life. The aftermath: searching for Laurie's body. Mark's confession did little to bring closure to Laurie's family. The search for Laurie's body continued for months. Her remains were discovered on October 1, 2004, almost 3 months after she had gone missing. The body, badly decomposed, could not confirm whether Laurie was pregnant at the time of her death, but it did confirm the horrifying truth of what had happened. Mark was arrested and charged with aggravated murder. His sentencing was initially for a term of 6 years to life, but public outrage led to a re-evaluation of his sentence. Laurie's law was enacted in her honor, increasing the minimum sentence for aggravated murder in Utah. Even behind bars, Mark's behavior continued to shock those around him. He was caught signing autographs for a site that specialized in murder memorabilia.
Thanks for watching. For more, subscribe, like, share, and comment.